Hey everyone, number 56 on my list of 100 greatest songs of all time is Cast on Shadow by Oasis. Um, I was very lucky to see Richard Ashcroft live a few weeks ago now. It was the first time I saw him live in like 26 years. I saw him initially just after he left the Verve in the Olympia Theatre, and I saw him this time in the Three Arena. When What's the Story Glory came out, the Verve were in the middle of their Northern Soul period, and they had befriended each other. Noel, Liam, and Richard Ashcroft had befriended each other. Richard Ashcroft was still Mad Richard, and he was a bit of a lunatic when he was younger. But Noel Gallagher dedicated the song to him on the What's the Story album, and obviously What's the Story was a massive album. And he particularly talked about the line, bound with all the weight of all the words he tried to say. Bound with all the weight of all the words he tries to say. He suggested that Richard Ashcroft seemed to be quite sad, and that he was, I suppose, overthinking or getting in his own way with regards to writing songs and suggestion of the words. And not long after this, the Verve would release Urban Hymns, which was a huge album, obviously led by Bittersweet Symphony, but with some of my favourite songs, and Richard Ashcroft, one of my favourite songwriters of all time. But it was interesting to see two bands at the time, considering Oasis and Blur, for instance, going at each other, or at least the press suggested that there was a friendship between Noel and Richard Ashcroft that went so far as to Noel Gallagher be dedicating a song to him on his second album. And the song itself, to me, is in this list because there's a number of reasons. I think if it had been on an album that didn't have Wonderwall, I think that would have been the single. It was the last song written for the album, and it's Wonderwall-esque in that it's an acoustic-led song, and there's little bits of production that are kind of similar to it. But if you take them just as two individual songs, not as on the same album, but just separate them if you can. For me, I think Liam Gallagher's vocal performance in Cast on Shadow is one of his best. Not quite his best, because there is Slide Away, which probably is his best vocal performance. What Noel does with his vocals, with the harmonies and the falsettos, very rubber soul era Beatles. And Wonderwall's quite, obviously influenced by the Beatles. All of Oasis music really is, and they seem to have touched on all the periods of the Beatles. But there's some incredible little bits in it, like the drumming in it is amazing on Cast on Shadow. Played, I would imagine, with brushes, but the drums are a lot freer or something. Like Alan White's on the drums, and he is a really good drummer, Alan White, to be fair, but he does have, obviously, like every drummer has a particular style, but he kind of is a bit looser on this. The bass is peculiar, because when I first kind of really, I suppose, like analysed the song, I heard the bass and I thought, that doesn't sound like Guigsy's bass, because he's very, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's good for the music, it suits the music, he's very, the notes like, that kind of stuff. He's not a very overly ambitious bass player, not like No Frills kind of thing. You listen to the last part of the song, there's some cool little slides, which is kind of suggests Paul McCartney-esque, who obviously was hugely influenced by someone like James Jamerson, the Motown, one of the bass players in Motown, and he does a little bit more on it than Guigsy would have. So Noel plays the bass. He plays a mellotron on it, which is hard to pick out, to be honest. He plays an ebow with his guitar. If you don't know what an ebow is, it's a small handheld device that you hold over the strings, and it works by vibrations, but it's very delicate to play. And I first saw, maybe Johnny Greenwood was the first person I saw play it. I know Peter Buck plays it as well, because REM have a song called Ebo the Letter, so they even name checked the it's not an instrument really, it's kind of a device, but yeah, again, but there's lovely little acoustic lead parts that he uses. These kind of, like picking just small little additions that suggest that, like, one song has to be the last song on the album. I mean, that's just the way, or the last song written for the album. And sometimes people think of it as an afterthought, but I think it's like, and they seem to cherish the songs, they played it live and stuff like that. But it's always stood out for me, and it's not like complicated. It starts. Just A sus4 to G. Here's a thought for every man who tries to understand what's in his hand. I don't think Noel Gallagher's strongest point is his lyrics, but I think the lyrics are quite good in this. But there's one particular part that I kind of wanted to play, and it's 9:30 in the morning, so this vocals might not be up to scratch, but I just wanted to play it anyway. As they took his soul, they stole his pride. As they took his soul, they stole his pride. And like that's repeated 3 times. And I thought, like, was that about Richard Ashcroft? But obviously it's not. It's the one I talked about. But that's repeated 3 times, and then it's like, as he faced the sun, he cast no shadow, which is a beautiful line anyway. But that line that he said about Ashcroft, bound with all the weight of all the words he tried to say, is actually, there's a lot in that, and I suppose a kind of unfairness towards Noel Gallagher sometimes in how he writes lyrics, and I don't really rate that. That's actually a really strong lyric, considering he explained what it's about, being Richard Ashcroft. It does kind of hit you differently when you know it's about somebody. It's not even about, because most songs are about somebody, but I suppose it's about somebody who I admire in particular, and someone who I would consider, if I was to say the best songwriters of the 90s, it would be Tom York, Damon Albarn, and Richard Ashcroft. It would be my 3 favourites anyway. So I don't think I'm like biased. I don't think I'm saying it because this song was dedicated to Richard Ashcroft, but it did make me take more of an interest in it when I was reading about it. But if you go and watch this from Nebworth or from Main Road from 96, I think, it's so good. And another thing I didn't mention, the strings in the background, they're subtle enough, but they're beautiful. Very simple, straightforward arrangements, but sometimes that's all you need in a song. So yeah, Cast No Shadow by Oasis. Thanks.